Welcome to Futures Hub, the podcast that ignites curiosity and navigates the pathways to tomorrow. I'm Mia, your guide on this journey into the future, where we explore the art of foresight, community co-creation, and personal growth. In each episode, we dive deep into innovative techniques to unlock the potential to shape our individual capacities and contribute to vibrant, inclusive communities. Join us as we mine the rich landscape of foresight, community empowerment, and building bridges between diverse voices. Whether you're a seasoned futurist or just dipping your toes into the world of foresight, let's embark on this journey together. Welcome to Futures Hub. Welcome back to the Futures Hub podcast, where we explore how foresight, co-creation, and community engagement can help build futures for all. Today I'm joined by Sarah Brin, an experienced designer, researcher, and creative strategist whose work lives at the intersection of art, technology, and futures thinking. Sarah's an executive producer and creative industries advisor, specializing in research and development for immersive experiences in creative technology. She's previously worked for Sony PlayStation, Meow, Rolls-Royce, Superflex, Watershed, and others. With extensive hands-on production experience, Sarah bridges her clients' artistic vision with practical execution, ensuring that her projects maintain their edge throughout the development process. Sarah's practice is inherently interdisciplinary. She combines timely cultural and technological perspectives with the practical knowledge of how to get ambitious things done. Her clients come to her with juicy problems that range from building creative teams, connecting with audiences, creating new business models, and more. With a track record of delivering multi-million-dollar projects on time and under budget, Sarah excels at translating artistic concepts into executable systems. Her deep understanding of both creative methodologies and production processes enables her to navigate the tension between artistic ambition and real-world action. In today's conversation, Sarah shares how immersive experiences can do more than entertain us, how they can spark critique, foster play, and even give people a renewed sense of agency in shaping the world around them. From her work with Meow to her creative R&D practices that help organizations test ideas cheaply and effectively, all the way to her vision of futures that are not just survivable, but thriving, Sarah reminds us that designing experiences isn't just about spectacle. It's about creating spaces where people can experiment, slow down, and imagine new possibilities together. Whether you're a futurist, an artist, or simply curious about how immersive design can shape culture, this episode is packed with insights and provocations you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Thanks so much, Sarah, for joining us today on the Futures Hub podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you today, and I know that our listeners will be learning so much from you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here on the Futures Hub podcast.
Wondering, as we jump right in, how you found yourself at the intersection of immersive experience and experience design, as well as futures thinking.
I've always been a really interdisciplinary person, and I have always been drawn to arts and creativity, not specifically because of the beauty of any particular art object or objects, but because I've seen them a lens to particular moments in time, ideas, social groups. I think because of that interdisciplinary perspective, it's very much opened me up to thinking about systems thinking. As you know, there's such a deep connection between systems thinking and futures and foresight. Having been an art historian, I've also always been drawn to participatory art movements, artworks that bring people together, that make hands-on, or everyone doing an activity or an objective together.
I love how you reference the interdisciplinary nature of your experience. You have worked across so many different sectors. You've worked across tech and art and games and culture. One of the things that we've discussed a lot on this podcast is trying to democratize futures, trying to make it more accessible to people who might not necessarily be working in these spaces or familiar with these terms. When you talk across disciplines about futures thinking or about the work that you do, how do you describe it to people who are outside of these industries?
I think a lot of people, when I talk about futures and foresight without context, they're like, are you some kind of wizard prognosticating and predicting the future? But when I talk about it, I frame it in the way of Don't we all have a stake in the world? Shouldn't it be more than the Elon Musks or Mark Zuckerbergs of the world shaping our relationship to technology and how that technology shapes our relationship to our world and the world around us? I think about futures work as a way to bring more people on board into the conversation of the worlds we're building and to hopefully build a better one in the process.
With your experience, what are the pieces that make an experience truly immersive, that really bring you into an experience?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, we're not actually getting into a swimming pool most of the time, right? When we say immersed, what does that really mean? The school of thought that I subscribe to is sensory engagement, not just activating our sense of sight, because I think, especially when you think about art and creativity, we have an overdependence on sight, but bringing other senses into the mix that might be tactile experiences, scent, taste, audio. Also, a suspension of disbelief can often be part of that. And saying, okay, we're drawing, to borrow the term from sociologist Johann Huizinga, a magic circle. We're creating a distinction between the world of the outside and the world we're deliberately creating and buying into for a limited time together. Is there that suspension of disbelief? Sometimes in my practice, I'm conflicted by that suspension. Like, oh no, the world is full of these really important issues that demand our attention all the time. So checking out of reality maybe isn't very responsible. But I also think that reframing a perspective or taking a pause or creating an environment in which it's safer to experiment or explore or slow down or take on a different personality, that can also have transformative implications for how we decide to re-enter the everyday world.
Can you provide an example of one of your favorite immersive experiences that integrated that futures lens from the work that you've done?
A project that I worked on with the immersive experience design company Meow, specifically, it's called Omega Mart. Omega Mart is located in Las Vegas. It is a fully interactive, hands-on immersive exhibition. You can touch everything, and there's all kinds of experiences to uncover there. There's also a very strong narrative that goes throughout the space. So when you enter Omega Mart, you are in the wackiest supermarket in the multiverse. You can buy things like whale song deodorant. You can buy things like apples, which are happy apples. It's full of all of these really, really bizarre products. And as you explore the store, you start to realize, okay, there's something strange going on here. And then as you explore the store further, there are portals or doors into the back doors of the store. And later on, you get to their corporate headquarters. That story, without giving away too much, is about this corporate drama that is very much a critique of the hyper capitalist consumption oriented world that we live in. What I love about Meow Wolf's work and what I love about Omega Mart is it is a very, very playful, very welcoming space. But also, in a place like Las Vegas, it creates a little bit of room for that critique of being like, oh, yeah, there are so few independent forms of media. And, oh, yeah, what happens in mom and pop stores? And, oh, what's at the end of all of this consumption? And while it's not directly correlating to something factual that happens in the real world, I think that by demonstrating that we can riff on these themes, make fun of them, we can indicate that another world is possible and maybe there's room for a world that might feel a little bit more playful, more exploratory, and maybe also less corporate.
That is a really, really cool project. There's undeniably the necessity for this type of work and the need to immerse yourselves in these spaces to experience different features or think more critically. But how does something like this even begin? You're based out of the UK. This is a project that's out in Las Vegas. This sounds like a super cool experience and space that you're working in? How did it come to be to create these spaces to flourish and thrive and invite people into these spaces? How does that look?
If you look at a lot of finished products and projects, it can be really easy to feel intimidated because you're not seeing the process. But when I was a much younger person, when I was like 19 and 20 at my university, we would do these art pranks at our university. We had this dining hall and it was buffet style. And one evening we thought it would be really fun if we put a bunch of tablecloths on the tables, lit candles and candelabras, hired a strolling violinist, and transformed our dining hall into a fancy restaurant. We were just goofy kids having fun, but at the same time, that's experience design. Even though I don't work for Meow anymore, Meow started as a 10-person art collective. They're making artworks with stuff they dumpster dive. They didn't buy this stuff. It's all foraged, and it started off super, super scrappy. And now it's a multi-million-dollar company. And one of the things that really struck me is one time I was at a conference and someone was like, well, when are you going to build an immersive experience like this in our town? And I was like, you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for us. Build your own. And I just desperately want people to realize that you too can build transformative experiences. And it's not just people who have huge production budgets. Interventions can be small, they can be playful, but they also don't have to cost anything.
That's amazing perspective. One of the things that you'd mentioned on your site was this idea of supporting with creative R&D. And you've alluded to elements of creative R&D throughout this conversation already, but plain languaging it. I was wondering if you could describe what creative R&D looks like and how people can begin incorporating this into corporate or institutional settings. What is it and how could we incorporate those pieces?
That is a great question. And thank you so much for pointing out my use of jargon. Depending on what discipline you're in, you might call this creative R&D, you might call this prototyping, but really what this is experiments. So much of design and so much of engineering and so much of most things is thinking about that process, thinking about what is one small step, what is one small experiment. It does not have to be good to get you one step closer to the thing that you want. One example is one time I was working with a museum in Norway, and they were about to hire this very expensive design firm. And I was like, before you hire this firm, it'd be really useful to develop a prototype of what you wanted them to build. And they're like, what do you mean we can't build a prototype of this digital experience because we're not developers? And I was like, what if you had a piece of paper and you pretended it was an iPad and drew fake buttons on there and step by step sketched out your experience? And you could figure out, does that work, at least conceptually? In game design, this is called paper prototyping. And they were very skeptical, but they tried it. And a couple weeks later, they came back to me. They were like, Sarah, we tried the experiment and it was very boring. And I was like, you're welcome. I don't know how much money I just saved you by helping work through a bad idea quickly and cheaply. There's this concept called lo-fi prototyping, which is how can you test an idea, and often it's a digital idea, by using non-digital materials to test your hypothesis. Every digital game almost always starts off as a paper experience, as a board game, as a card game. This is all about starting small, starting simple before developing complex, expensive projects.
You've worked with companies both large and small. When you have these conversations about immersive experiences, about creative R&D and the process to get there, do you find that there are any particular sticking points or areas that you really have to talk through? And what are those sticking points and how do you grapple with that approach?
It can be really scary or intimidating to engage with a process that you don't know you're going to 100% get right. And I know this because I myself am a recovering perfectionist. But especially in organizations where there's a lot of pressure, the willingness to intentionally fail can definitely be a sticking point. It's important to frame that as part of the process. I do writing work from time to time, and I have to really understand and lean into the fact that my first draft is going to be nonsense. It's going to be horrible. And then I edit it, and then it's better and better and better. But I just know, I accept now it's going to start off really bad. It's a lot easier to embrace that perspective when you're in an organization where there's trust, where there's respect and time. And that's all really hard to make space for, but it pays off.
What does success look like for you when you're designing an immersive experience for impact? Are you able to bring this lens of success criteria to the clients you work with, or is it often dictated by the client's expectations?
One of my favorite questions to ask my clients is, what does success look like for you? What does it look like for you as an individual? And what does it look like for you as a company or department? Because all of these things might have different answers. But if I can think specifically about what I want, I always love it if the project that I'm making isn't making the world actively worse. It's important to me that the projects I create don't generate a lot of waste. Are we reusing materials? Are we breaking them down? Are they recyclable or compostable in any way? Have we tested our experience to know that audiences are going to respond in the ways that we want them to? So going back to this idea of prototyping and bringing audiences in to see experiences before they're done is a huge part of that, and conducting user research interviews before and after with your audiences to see, have I shifted sentiment at all? I get really excited if people walk away from seeing one of my projects with a renewed sense of agency. If they walk away from one of my projects and they think, hey, the stuff I do matters, I matter, my community matters, I can take actions, I can have agency, whether it's very, very, very small or something that feels much larger than that, I have influence in building the future that I want. That is the ultimate goal. Not every project I do is able to hit that mark, but that's really at the core of everything I did.
I love that overarching mission and having that focus on purpose, because I imagine working in a space that you're in that's very future facing, very experiential, that technologies can change, methods can change, materials even can shift. Have you seen a significant shift since you've started this work in the type of experiences you're able to design or the types of tools that you're using? And how has that helped you or hindered you, either or, in that mission for creating that sense of agency for folks?
When I was working as an arts educator in a contemporary art museum, I definitely saw the shift because a big part of using the educational style that we used at that museum in Los Angeles was about making the audience feel heard. And it was very much about paraphrasing what the participant had said and then connecting that to other things that they had said or other members in the group. So that made them feel heard and it made them feel intelligent, which is really important. You'd notice anecdotally a huge shift in mood, perspective, curiosity from the beginning to the end of a 1 hour tour. So that was pretty incredible to think about it in a different way. Immersive experiences like a Meow experience or an immersive theater performance like Punch Drunk or Cirque du Soleil. It's more about refining the medium, thinking about what's our baseline for the field, like what the minimum expectations, what are the standard practices for designing these types of experiences and creating consistent tools across the board, but also creating critical criteria in terms of how can we measure this? Are we expecting the beginning, middle, or end? If there are characters, are we expecting the characters to become more complex? It's really hard to measure audience behavior after an experience to see if they've changed, unless you're going to follow people around for weeks, which would be very interesting. But I think for the field of immersive in general, it's about raising the stakes more and more and more and more for the quality of work we produce.
It does seem like opportunities to raise those stakes have been increasing in recent years with the new technology available to us. I wonder if there's anything in particular you're excited about from an immersive or emerging technology perspective in this space that you've seen emerge in these last few years? If there's anything that really excites you that helps you with these installations or these experiences?
I am not the biggest headset fan, whether that's augmented reality or virtual reality. I still get nauseous. It messes up my eye makeup. And when people think about immersive work, that's usually not the space that I'm thinking about. But I do get really excited about experiences in physical space. I love hidden technology like sensors, biometric monitors, things that can trigger sound or light or even haptic cues based on stuff that happens in an immersive world. And how can I not mention AI? I think there's a massive challenge posed by AI to the creative industries. And that makes me very worried in a lot of important ways. But the introduction of many other technologies have radically transformed art making. Photography transformed the way we looked at painting, and the printing press changed the way we looked at the written word. AI is also going to change the way we make art. My hope, and I'm seeing this, that it will help us add a layer of complexity to the artworks we make now rather than operate as a substitute for any particular human artist, a tool to deepen or enrich a creative work rather than act as a substitute. And I am seeing some really, really interesting work across the board with artists making moves in that space, but I think we need to study it more.
It definitely feels like we're at this intersection or this point of transition, particularly in the space of immersive experience. That oftentimes when you speak with people and they think of immersive experience, they think of a VR headset or some sort of artificial reality or augmented reality. Is this something that you've been bumping up a lot when you've been working with clients who come to you for immersive experience, where they might just be thinking immersive experience VR tech headsets, and you have to coach them, or are we still quite open in that regard?
The word immersive basically doesn't mean anything anymore because it's used to describe so many things. And I deal with that on a day-to-day basis. Someone comes to me and they want to make a VR experience. I'm not gonna be like, that's not immersive. But I do like to ask about their experiential goals with their audience. Like, how do you want people to feel? What has made you want to choose this particular technology? Is it because you have a sense of FOMO that's making you feel like you need to engage with this? That's fear of missing out. Or is it because you are actually genuinely interested in the expressive affordances of this particular medium? I'm very much a all ships rise at high tide kind of person. And if some people want to throw whatever it is into the mix, that's great. Meanwhile, I'm going to be over wherever I am trying to add more standards, add more richness to projects in the field, whether or not that's digital or physical experience design.
That's wonderful. As we talk about the future, inevitably the question comes up of what kind of future are you hoping to create? You alluded to this mission for everyone understanding their sense of agency. As we co create towards the future, as we roll out these various projects, what kind of future are you hoping to design or through your work? Which projects really excite you that you would like to move forward with? And what does that vision, Sarah's vision, look like?
There is a protest sign behind me in my office that says it's up to us to build a survivable future, but to be a little bit more optimistic than that, not just survivable, but thriving. That's one where, from a climate perspective, we live in a world that does not experience constant natural disaster driven by climate change, in which people are displaced by climate change. This also means looking at a lot of the systemic injustice in our world. I'm from America, so I'm very, very, very aware of how differences in class and race and ability and gender affects our abilities to earn money, live lives that are safe and happy, that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness stuff. You get to have that, but for real. And also, universal basic income. It doesn't have to be the end of the world if AI becomes even more ubiquitous than it is now, we've seen all kinds of experiments in which UBI means people become more engaged in service to their communities and caretaking and all kinds of wonderful things. So I would love it if we have the good version of AI in which we can automate a lot of the more annoying parts of our world, and then we can spend more time taking care of each other and being curious and being playful, not just eking by and trying to survive, but really living life.
I hear you. The AI that does my laundry, not the AI that writes his books, right?
Yeah. See, where's the AI that picks plastic out of the ocean?
One of the things that you alluded to is your global perspective. You mentioned you were based out of the States, now you're in the UK. I was wondering if you could give me that high level overview of when the best time would be to reach out, when to engage with you, and who should engage with you, if it's at companies or individuals, if they're from the States or otherwise.
I am the person you bring in when you need to design a new system or a new program that brings multiple disciplines or multiple ideas or multiple fields together, especially when that includes experience design, R&D, creativity, and technology. And yes, I do have the international experience. I am very familiar with many of the nuances that come along with working with international teams and people of different backgrounds. But I am still glad we have an internet where strangers can reach out to each other. I think that's part of how we got connected. So if any of these ideas resonate with you, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about your work. And of course, if there's a project where you need someone like an executive producer or an advisor, by all means, give me a shout because this is how we build the world that we want.
Absolutely, to do it together. Impossible to build a world alone. If people were to take away one idea from this conversation and integrate it into their own creative practice or organization, what would you like to leave them with?
Do it bad. Don't let an idea just live in your head forever, never letting it see the light of day. Just do it. And it doesn't matter if it's not perfect when it comes out of your brain. That's the only way we get towards anything. I struggle with this too, but it's something I say to my clients all the time, and you have to start somewhere.
Sarah, I love that. I needed to hear that. It's so easy to get stuck in that analysis paralysis or the desire for it to be perfect or the fear of what if it doesn't look exactly the way it should in my head and it goes out into the world and the world sees it. So that reassurance is very, very helpful. Are there any upcoming events or projects that you would like to share with listeners or calls to action?
The best way to stay in the loop about that would be to check out my website. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. I'm Sarah Brin Consulting on Instagram, and any new or exciting updates you'll find there. I will also be speaking at the Immersive Experience Network Summit in London this autumn. And I'll be talking about XR, technology and experience design there. But otherwise, give me a shout. I love doing public speaking and guest lecturing. So by all means, I'd love to be in a city near you sometime soon.
Sarah, you're an absolute pleasure to speak with. I really value these conversations where we can talk both about your individual experience, but also all the things that you've learned through that experience that you could share with folks. This has been such an honor and such a pleasure. I know there's a lot of nuggets here for our guests.
This was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me and for such thoughtful questions.
Thank you, Sarah. And there you have it, folks. Another great conversation, this time with Sarah Brin, reminding us that futures work doesn't just belong to tech or massive institutions. It belongs to all of us. Through creative R&D, playful interventions, and immersive experiences that engage all our senses, Sarah shows how we can create work that not only entertains but also empowers people to see that their choices matter, their communities matter, and that they themselves matter in shaping the future. If there's one key takeaway from this conversation, remember Sarah's encouragement to do it bad. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect idea to start experimenting, prototyping, and sharing, because it's through these imperfect first steps that better, bolder features begin to take shape. To learn more about Sarah's work, check out the show notes where we link all the great resources and references that Sarah shares in today's episode. As always, thanks for listening to Futures Hub. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your network, leave us a review, and help us bring more people into this conversation about the futures we can co-create. Tag us on Instagram or LinkedIn, share your thoughts, and let's keep the discussion going about how we can shape better futures together. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Futures Hub so you never miss an episode. We have more incredible guests coming your way, diving deep into the intersections of foresight, community, and co-creation. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep imagining, keep co-creating, and keep working towards those better futures for all.